Welcome to this episode of the podcast. Today I'm sitting with Femke, who's been visiting me here in Vienna for 4 weeks for a mentorship program. Hi, Femke.
Hi.
Maybe you can briefly introduce yourself to our listeners.
Yes.
Where are you from? What are you doing?
Yes. So my name is Femke Van der Wilt and I'm from Amsterdam. I work there at the VU University. And I'm employed in the Department of Education. And I did a PhD research. It was about young children in early childhood education, so children in the age of 4 to 6 years. And I looked at the relation between their level of oral communicative competence, so their ability to communicate with others, and their social position within their peer group. So is it the case that children who are good in communicating with others are more accepted by their peers as well? And that was the case, at least that is what I found in my research. I defended my thesis in October 2018, and then I started a postdoc project, and now I'm here.
Here in Vienna. So for to reiterate again, so for mentoring program, basically for 4 weeks. So this is our basically last meeting, almost last day for you in Vienna. And we decided to basically make a podcast episode exactly about this, actually, like our experience, our views on the mentoring and how it works and what the benefits could be, just to encourage you, our listeners, in a way to maybe find a mentor yourself, or maybe on the other hand, make yourself useful as a mentor to mentor other people, because I think this can be a very important experience for both parties involved. So today we want to use this episode to basically reflect on this, to kind of show what works, what is useful to do while mentoring in this academic setting, when it comes to producing research, when it comes to writing, whatever. So we are kind of generalizing the overall theme of this podcast, which of course is on writing, on producing research, but we're generalizing a bit to include all aspects of the academic life. So, first things first, maybe let's start with the question, how did this actually come into being? Femke, maybe that's actually more your part to talk about. Like, how did you approach this? What were your thoughts, your interests? Like, how did you set this mentoring program up, actually?
So first of all, I think that finding a mentor is, as you said as well, is very valuable just in general. So apart from this specific grant, because it really allows you to take a step back and to reflect on where you're going, on your career, some decisions you made in the past or are about to make. And for me, there was an early mentoring grant, and I knew about this grant, and it's a grant that is from the European Association of Learning and Instruction. And the grant is meant for young researchers who are actually in their transition from their PhD position to a postdoc position. And I think in general that mentoring is very helpful when you are in a transition phase in your career. And this is one of these phases. And the grant actually requires you to find a mentor, so an experienced researcher who works abroad and who is willing to be your mentor for 2 to 4 weeks. And of course is interesting for you with regard to your research project. And in my case, it was a conference of the EARLI organization at which I heard about the work of you, Dominique. And I followed a workshop and it was about social network analysis. And this was a type of analysis that was really interesting for my research, but it was also an analysis that I didn't know much about yet. So for me, the decision was quite easy for who my mentor would be, or who I was going to ask to be my mentor. And I really had already quite some clear ideas, I guess, about what I wanted to discuss with regard to my research. So in order to advance my research, because like I said, I previously looked at the relation between children's communicative abilities and their social position within the group. But we also know from theories and from research that children tend to prefer to play with peers who are similar to them. So, for example, when we look at gender, boys prefer to play with boys and girls prefer to play with girls, especially during early childhood. So I wondered, maybe this would also be the case when we look at children's communicative abilities. So is it so that children who have similar levels of oral communicative competence prefer to play with each other instead of the conclusion that everyone likes to play with children who have well-developed communicative abilities? And that was sort of the conclusion of my PhD research. So those were some questions that I had, and I really like to look into it more. And besides the research, of course, also, I thought it would be a great opportunity to, take some distance from my daily work and to think some things through, to reflect on some career paths and to discuss them with a mentor.
Yeah. There are three things that, I just want to chip in here because you, was triggered by what you said, basically. One is concerned with because you said you're kind of like the junior mentee in your transition to the postdoc, and I'm like the experienced researcher, which of course felt a bit strange when I received your email, because there's not so much difference in terms of academic age, right? It's just like 3 years or so, around that number. But that's actually, I think, a very important factor to take into account when you're looking for your own mentor, because if the spread is too wide, it probably isn't very useful, because, academia changes, so the rules are very different than it was 20, 30 years ago. And also, even if the questions are the same, then, you might not have a good memory anymore. It might be more nostalgia that the mentor is sharing than real facts and thoughts that went through his or her heads. So I'm actually quite happy about this quite narrow spread in terms of how far we are apart in our careers. So I think, I just want to point out this is one fact to consider when you're looking for a mentor. And as you beautifully outlined, the other thoughts that you have in terms of how can this actually be helpful for me? So adding this new method in your case to your portfolio in a way. So this is a really nice opportunity, a nice rationale, I think, to engage in such an activity. Then the second point that I wanted to mention, that I just wanted to confirm that indeed you were very well prepared in terms of what you wanted from the mentorship, like also proposing names of whom I could connect you to, having a clear research project at hand, actually, where I can be of assistance. So this is indeed very helpful, not talking from the mentor perspective. And this was, set the whole agenda, basically. And of course, we deviated at one point, maybe, had a lot of open space also to discuss other things. But I think it was really important to have these 1-2 things that, you brought into the mentoring relationship. And the last thing that I want to discuss, just for the listeners, I think mentoring can take many different forms. And what we are having here is something that is very intense, compressed into a short time frame. So as you mentioned, you're actually not at your home institution. You're abroad now, so you're in a different context, which is also very nice, just to get distance to your overall work, etc. So be in a more reflective state, maybe. But of course, there can be many other forms of mentoring as well. So of course, the mentoring also will not end now with today, with this podcast, basically. But there will be some follow up in just a different form, right? So just being open also to the form maybe is also very important, and maybe gives you, if you want to look for a mentor, more flexibility in terms of who could be that person. Yeah, so those were the 3 things that I just wanted to chip in. And now maybe we want to focus more on the learning aspect of like how was it useful, or what could we extract from that. I think from both perspectives, like both from the mentee and the mentor perspective, and we have narrowed down this to 4 fields, you could say. So one is research and research outputs. Another one is career development, that direction. And the third is teaching. And fourth is just the general networks, which of course, kind of ties into career development maybe, but we treat it as a separate field of learning here maybe. So let's just start with research. What's your feeling here, your reflection on what did we do in this respect, and where is this leading to?
Well, the research part, of course, focused partly on an introduction actually into social network analysis. So that was really the analysis that I was interested in, and that is your expertise. So, we had many meetings, and part of these meetings were just really about looking at my data that I had previously collected and discussing possibilities for analysis. You explained the rationale behind social network analysis, also about the practical applications. You talked a lot about social network theories and how it is also very much a different perspective and a different way of looking at your data and looking at research, looking at social processes within classrooms, for example. That really helped me to get a better understanding of what social network analysis is, and also, you gave me a lot of literature that I can read to further my understanding of these analysis and these theories that are accompanied by the analysis, and it really opened up opportunities or possibilities to look at data in a different way, and also to think about how you could use this in future research for projects, for example. And in terms of products, we wrote a book chapter, which is also about social network analysis, but also about other things. And we made a start with a paper in which we look at my previously collected data and use social network analysis, and in which we actually aim to investigate new questions. So,
So, I can say pretty much the same, because what's interesting about this particular mentoring relationship that we have is that we are very different in terms of our research foci. So you're bringing in the content perspective, and I'm bringing in the methodological expertise, basically. Yeah. So that's very interesting also in terms of the papers that we write. I think that there's that we don't have much overlapping expertise, I think, but it's really like complementary. Yeah. So, I'm a methodologist. Of course, I think about methods, but then I have no field to apply it to. So bringing in this early childhood perspective, this was totally new to me. So for me, it's also like just a field where I can now publish also, where I certainly wouldn't have any publications if it wasn't for this mentoring relationship, right? So this is very, very interesting. So this is maybe also one thing to consider when selecting a mentor, like, how can this be of like mutual help in terms of reaching out to new fields, actually, right? You probably don't want to stay within the same field. I mean, I guess that's also the idea of the requirement that you mentioned before for the early grant, that you actually have to move to a different country. So you cannot be from the same institution, not from the same country. So you need to be in a slightly different context, so that already there's no guarantee for that you're really stepping outside of your content, but it's making it more likely. You mentioned the paper that we are writing. I think that's just a very important thing insofar that this will be the thing that keeps us connected over the next couple of months, because the paper is of course not finished. We have made some start with the analysis, with the writing, but of course there's still some way to go. And I think that has an important function actually, that it's like open. So there's this loose tie, and we still need to close this tie actually in the upcoming weeks and months. So this is a good reason to stay connected, to follow up. And also conference publications, of course, might be that are related to the paper, which gives us also another opportunity to also meet maybe in person, depending on the conference, of course.
Yeah.
And I want to say one last statement about the chapter, because the book chapter is something that I started writing alone. Was invited alone to do it, and then Femke approached me with the whole mentoring thing, and I just also saw this as an opportunity to engage early on and to build this tie, as we would say in social network analysis, through working on some real tasks together. I think this is essential, right? I mean, of course, mentoring can be just very reflective. You just talk about things, and that's okay. But I think in the academic context, mentoring is more than that. It's also about just having this kind of extending your network of collaborators, for instance, right? So there it's very useful to have some more trustworthy information actually, like how is it to work with that person, and does it actually make sense to pick up another paper project, right? Or is this just a frustrating experience, right? So I think this book chapter is, it was my idea to, I'm doing this very often with other people as well, right? Just reaching out early on, giving a lot of trust to other people without knowing them. But I think it's a great way to bond in a way, or to build this tie. I think that's empirically validated, proven strategy. Yeah. So that's for the research output. Now the career.
Yeah.
That's our second part. That's of course a bit of a fussy topic. But what's your experience? What are the things that you take away from this mentoring?
I think so. Part of our meetings were about research and data analysis, and the other part of our meetings was about talking about career planning, career strategies, but maybe primarily about the importance of thinking about what is valuable for you in your work, but also in life, and possibilities to transfer that into your work, and the importance of just making conscious decisions, I guess, within your career, instead of just going on and taking up every opportunity that comes your way. So I think it's just really nice to have time to discuss this with each other. And I think in the end, you're the one who needs to find out what is valuable to you, of course. But it really helps to share your thoughts with each other. And I talked to you about it, but also with other researchers. So I think that's very inspiring, just to hear others talk about their considerations regarding careers. And it really also, helped me to see that there are, different career paths. And when you're in your own work environment, you're, you maybe tend to be a little bit in a sort of bubble in which, everyone, participates, of course, in the same bubble, and it really, you might get the impression that this career path is the only one for you, or it's the only one that is valuable. And when you take a little bit of distance and talk with other people, you can see that there are many alternatives as well. So
that's also the thing that I take away, I think, from our discussions. Because I think career, like at least at depth that we discussed it is usually not being discussed just among colleagues, for instance. I mean, it had a different quality, I would say, right? It helps, and here again, it helps to have these different backgrounds in terms of institutional backgrounds here, because then we see, okay, maybe career paths are not that standardized across the whole world, across our institutions, but there are some differences, and it's interesting to explore those differences, I think, to see why is it different, or how can this be useful for me, what can I learn from this. And in general, just opening your eyes and being more vigilant that there are actually more than one. There's more than one way to have your academic career or whatever. So I think that's very, very interesting. What I also want to emphasize again is that you mentioned that you also talked with all the other people we met about the career and everything, and that's also what I found very, very, very good, very, very strong from you, because it was not just about career, it was also about teaching. You all the aspects that we covered in our talks, you also tried to basically engage the other people with. And this I found interesting, because I think normally when you meet a person for 1 hour, I usually introduce it via email. Okay, maybe this is an opportunity maybe for collaboration, etc. So this sets already the tone a bit, that it goes a bit more towards research. And often, in my experience, it often is just 100% about research. But you really, proactively ask also those questions about the other spheres that interest you. And this I found very interesting. Yeah. So again, just having a clear plan, which you obviously had, about what you want to learn from this experience, and then really following through and reaching out to people. Teaching, this was also a bit of a unexpected topic, maybe, because I'm not sure whether teaching was mentioned in some way in the proposal that we sent to EARLI, right? No. So what's your learning here? What's your impression? What did we talk about?
Yeah. No, it wasn't part of our of the proposal indeed, but at the same time, I mean, I'm not only a researcher but also a teacher. For me, it's 50-50, and you are also a teacher, and also think that teaching is very valuable, and you spend a lot of time and energy on it. And also the other people we met were also teachers, at least most of the time. So I think, for me, it was also just interesting to hear how the curriculum here at this university is, for example, what topics are covered and in what way. I joined 2 lectures. So I joined one ring lecture within your course, in which a PhD student talked about her research and discussed some methodology issues with the students. And I joined a seminar, which was, attended by students who were in the teacher education department. So it was also just really nice to see how this works here, and how what kind of students are there, and where are they from, and what kind of backgrounds do they have, what kind of teaching strategies do you use in your teaching. It's just I think inspiring to share these experiences and to see how it is done by others. Yeah.
I found this very, very useful too, very valuable, because with research is more of an open book, right? The practice of research is shared quite easily across contexts. But with teaching, we often don't do that. I mean, I have my personal goal to also publish a bit more in those more teaching practice oriented journals, because I think they're of course of no value scientifically, in terms of impact or so, but I still find this very valuable just to share teaching practices. And that's basically just what we did, also discussing different contexts. Like yesterday we were talking about exams, for instance. So this is very interesting, because there is really not a lot going on in terms of sharing knowledge, sharing practices about teaching in higher education. So I'm always happy to learn something about that. And here I want to chip in another information concerning, this, again, mentoring selection thing. Because first, like talking about research, I stressed like the importance of complementarity. And here, I think it was with teaching, it was really helpful that we had very similar views actually on the status of teaching. Because if I would be, very much focused on just publishing and I see like teaching as the thing that keeps me from publishing, right? Having a very negative view about this, then I'm not sure whether this would have been a successful relationship, because also then translating to career advice, it would be totally different, right? Yeah. Because I say, well, just reduce your teaching and write more, right? Yeah. So this is an interesting aspect. So it does need some complementarity. It does need some similarity, I think, in terms of maybe the values and that kind of thing. So that's one thing to keep in mind already, and maybe one point to explore early on in the mentoring relationship whether this is actually a good fit or not. Yeah. So in our case, I think we have been lucky because we didn't have the opportunity really to explore that much up front. But I think it did work out quite well by chance. And also teaching is also one thing where I hope to stay connected with you over the next weeks and months, maybe through our roundtable that I want to invite you to. Definitely. So that we can meet also virtually to just talk about teaching, because I think it's just too important to not share information here. And last but not least, it was already tackled a bit, but like the network aspect of mentoring. Here maybe I want to start because of the one thing that I already mentioned, that when you basically told me your plans of travel, so when you will be here, you already like attached a list. Okay, these are the people that I would like to meet, and where you think that I do have access to them. So very, very thoughtful in terms of, okay, these people that I can actually reach them. So that's helpful. And you already gave me the names, and I added just one person I think on my own. So very well done, I think, in terms of preparation. And this was very easy for me because I just needed to reach out to these people. Sometimes I attended, or I tried to attend all of the meetings actually, because some of the people that you mentioned were not part of my network at all, but they gave me a good reason, like you gave me a good reason to connect to them, right? So that was interesting. Yeah, so what's your learning here from your... How did the talks, the discussions with other researchers go?
So I met a few researchers, and they had different backgrounds. So some were from the education department, but I also met with a researcher from the Faculty of Psychology, for example. And these meetings were... quite different, of course. I mean, we talked about our research projects. So we just shared our experiences with research, tried to find maybe some links between research projects. But we also talked about teaching, and I also asked them about their considerations regarding career plans and strategies. So there were different topics, I guess, and it really depended on how much overlap there was between research projects, regarding how much you can look for collaborations maybe. So for example, I met one researcher from the Faculty of Psychology, as I said, and she, her research projects are quite similar to mine. She also looks at young children, looks at their ability to take others' perspectives, looks at children's development of play, which are also topics that I'm very much interested in and have some research projects on. So we could share a lot of experiences, of course, and also difficulties that we encounter in our research. And that was really nice. Maybe some future collaborations will result from this meeting as well. She, for example, also talked about how the University of Vienna has a program that aims to support female researchers. So they come together a couple of times, and different topics are covered then. And so it was also really nice to talk about these kind of, not so much about research, but more, Also again about career and steps that you want to take in this regard.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's obviously one thing that I couldn't deliver, like a female researcher program. So that's another good reason to include more people, and that's indeed the one thing that I, in my understanding as a mentor and as a social network researcher in a way, I really wanted to create as many ties as possible that seem meaningful. So today we're cannot talk about this a lot because we're just meeting her after this podcast episode, basically. But there's one meeting that I arranged, which I thought this could be very helpful, just because it's a person that is like on a very different career path, but a career path that we have discussed already. Like in the meetings talking about careers, we already talked about researcher careers, but outside academia, outside classical university structures. And so I ad hoc arranged this one meeting with a person from outside academia who's still a researcher, just to make this connection, and a researcher who's into SNA as well, so social network analysis. So this makes sense in more directions, in more ways. Yeah. So as I said, I think it was really, really great for you to have this plan, because especially if you have this tight framing in terms of the timing, it's quite good to have this plan. Else it's difficult. I mean, it's a busy period of time right now, just before Christmas, right? Everyone is busy with some closing projects and maybe being on holidays, whatever. So this was good to have this up front, so we can arrange something. Yeah. So these were the four topics, for fields of outputs that we wanted to discuss. And then there's one thing left that we mentioned before, and that is, I think it's important to create a system that allows us to basically stay in contact, to stay kind of also accountability for the things that we agreed to do. And so having this this open tie, as I said in the beginning, like with the one research paper that we are still writing, that's a great help in terms of guaranteeing a follow-up. But that's just something that we, before the podcast, mentioned. That's something that we should give to our listeners also, in terms of remembering to define some follow-up scheme, basically, whatever it is, right? It can be, of course, the work on the publication, but it can be just another series of meetings that takes a different format, whatever, right? But just not to forget that the mentoring is not necessarily over with seeing each other. I mean, maybe we don't see each other, but still there's something that the product that really that lives on, so to speak, right? That just happens afterwards, and that just still needs to be completed. So that's a hopefully helpful tip to take into account as well, in terms of when planning the whole mentoring thing, when making agreements, maybe of course, what do we want to achieve, and when is this actually due? Does it really happen like in this time frame that we have defined for the meetings, or is this something that has maybe some more longer schedule? Is there anything else you want to share, or?
Well, maybe I thought a bit about the difference maybe between a mentor and a supervisor, because during your PhD, you have your supervisors, of course, and they guide you in your research, but hopefully also in your career. And then after your PhD, this guiding might take a different form. So then, especially then, a mentor might be very helpful. But I think it's also still quite different, a mentor, when compared to a supervisor, because a supervisor is often quite close to you within the same organization, whereas a mentor is typically someone who works somewhere else and is in that sense more independent, maybe. So for me, it really helped me that we had a little bit more distance to reflect on some decisions and career plans, etc. And it really is different from just talking to your colleagues or talking to your supervisor about these same things. So sort of helps you to open up more and discuss different alternatives maybe.
I think that's a good point. I mean, the term mentoring is, I think, especially in academia, overused a bit, because sometimes people say like, as a supervisor, they also have like a mentoring role maybe for their subordinates, but of course that's not the idea of mentoring actually, right? No. So I have, like in my experience, I have quite some long history with being a mentee. And also as my mentor, but like from the mentee perspective, there were like 3-4 quite important or longer lasting mentoring relationships in my past and actually my present also. And there was only one where I was employee of the same organization, so it wasn't my direct supervisor or so. It was more top level management that was mentoring me basically, but still I found it maybe the least helpful because it wasn't like direct supervisorship, but as you said, it's the same context, and this is limiting in many ways. Also in terms of how you can talk with each other, because of course there are some topics that you might not want to share with top management, right? Exactly. If you're an employee of that organization. And the other mentors that I had were all from very different fields. Sometimes maybe with the problem that we have discussed like in the very beginning, that maybe the difference in terms of where they are in their career and their thinking was maybe too broad, and it wasn't probably as useful as it could have been for me, at least. But I guess there's no ideal relationship, of course, but there are some pluses and minuses for all different kinds of constellations. Well, Femke, thank you very much for this talk. I hope this was valuable to our listeners. We try to just point out to a few things to consider maybe when picking up a mentoring relationship, or give you some reason why to search for one in the first place. And with that said, go out and find some mentor.
Exactly.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you.